The clock came first, long before the gabled rooftops, the varnished bandstand, or the debonair bronze of Mayor Quintin de Lis that stands with its hat forever doffed. It was raised when the settlement was still a scattering of wagons and tarpaulin sheds, surrounded by whispering birches. The maker, no one remembers his name, chose the exact center of the clearing, built a low stone plinth, and set the contraption on top. A single polished dial, 4 filigreed hands, and a bell tuned to the key of D. The townsfolk leaned on their shovels to watch him wind a leather strap around the base, buckle it shut, then place his palm to the glass. A red shimmer pulsed beneath the surface, like an ember briefly exposed to wind. Beneath that first shy glow were threaded the heartbeats of every soul inside the clearing, and every soul to come. Generations passed, foundations replaced tent pegs, and the clock endured. No one serviced it, it never needed oil. Its brass casing resisted rust as if disdainful of time's tarnish. Every day at dawn, the hour hand flicked forward with a crisp snap, and a ripple of warmth brushed every breastbone in town, so subtle that visitors thought it the nip of morning chill rather than a borrowed beat returning home. Children pointed at the bell when it tolled, 12 precisely, sculpted strokes at midday, the resonance traveling up the veins of the elm trees and out through the church spire. Old-timers casually believed it possessed a soul of its own, but nobody mentioned the debt. They were polite, these people, and politeness is often a convenient disguise for dread. I first learned the nature of that debt at 16. My father, Calmo Verity, kept the county record books. People assumed the job was drudgery, but inside those bindings, each page rustled with secrets. Birth notations, post-mortem tallies, and folded correspondence marked confidential. One rainy September evening, I found him at the dining table poring over fresh entries. His brow glistened. His knuckles were bone white on the ledger's spine. At length he closed the book, sent my younger sister to bed, beckoned me close, and whispered the words that have echoed behind every thought I've had since. If the clock stops, son, we freeze where we stand, locked in one breathless moment. But our hearts keep beating for it, and they don't start again. He wouldn't say more, yet there were corroborations. When a wheelwright died suddenly in the outskirts, a neighbor swore he saw the minute hand judder backward for half a tick, just as the man collapsed. The coroner noted the corpse's heart looked shriveled, the color of dried lingonberries. Over the next months I gathered murmurs. How the air around the square somehow kept its temperature even in the deepest snow. How stray dogs gave the pillar a wide berth. How an occasional stranger sang an off-key tune at the fountain and was found the next day wandering the street with sunken eyes and a pulse so faint you could scarcely feel it. These were puzzle pieces no one dared fit together aloud. Life persisted in its ordinary errands, but once you're shown the thread, you see it run through everything. On market days, I watched merchants unconsciously adjust their breathing to the rhythm of the pendulum's hidden sweep. Lovers timing kisses by the half-hour chime went home oddly exhausted. I asked Elsie Bramble, the watchmaker's daughter, if she'd noticed customers replacing pocket watches faster than elsewhere. She admitted she replaced mainsprings often. She joked that local timepieces aspired to keep up with the square. We laughed, and I felt the clock collect that laugh, tuck it away like a borrowed coin. The first overt crisis struck 5 winters later. The night snow buried every roof, and the river became a silver road. Storm clouds rolled in from the north, bruised and swirling. At 3:07 IEM, according to records, light failed across the county as lightning shattered the power lines. People stumbled in their dark houses, candles trembling inside palms, and the clock stopped. Those awake later said they felt a soft tug beneath the breastbone, as if a thread had snapped and the loose end fluttered inside. My mother, half asleep, thought it heartburn, but the moment I registered the silence of the bell, I knew. Outside, the lamps on Elm Street froze mid-flicker, tongues of flame trapped in glass. A cart horse remained mid-stride, snowflakes suspended in parody of constellations around its mane. I pushed through the door and discovered that air itself had the texture of unset glue. Each step took treacherous effort, yet I moved, because my pulse drove me forward while the world lounged in terror's tableau. At the square I found 3 others: Elsie, Mayor Quentin, and old Pietra the herbalist, all of us breathing, moving, all of us dizzy with a pressure behind the eyeballs that suggested our hearts were accelerating to feed some invisible maw. The hands on the dial lay still at 7 minutes past 3. Behind the glass, a smoldering ruby haze flickered erratically. We tried to speak, but words left our mouths in slow, drawn-out ribbons, as though sound itself were wading through syrup. And as we felt at the slow, drawn-out ribbons, as though sound itself were wading through syrup, we had to shout syllables one by one. With Hatet, H-A-P-P-E-N-E-D, I pointed at the casing, then to my chest. They understood. With time paralyzed, the clock could not harvest fresh beats in measured sips. Instead, it siphoned recklessly, like a pump with its governor removed. Already my throat felt raw, my vision narrowing. Pietra clutched her shawl and croaked, "We need to wind it." Wind it! Such an innocent verb for what we attempted. Mayor Quentin scaled the plinth, boots slipping on rime. He grabbed the leather strap at the base, now slick with crimson dew, heart sweat from 100 unconscious donors, and tried to turn the buckle. It would not budge. Elsie rummaged in her bag, retrieved a jeweler's screwdriver, and pried at the brass seam. A sting of sparks leaped out. The mayor yelped, fell to the stones, his left palm blistered. The damage was superficial. The greater injury was to morale. Pietra, gasping, said, "We must give it what it asks, a strong heart. Then the gears will move." Her eyes found mine, and I knew why. I was the youngest, the fittest. I felt a flare of survival terror, shameful yet powerful. The clock hummed greedily. I imagined my chest splitting open, arteries funneled through gears, beats clicking away until empty. "No," Elsie said, surprising us all. She drew herself up to her full modest height, gray snow in her curls. "Hearts are not fuel. They are vows." She rested a hand on my arm. Then she glared at the inert dial, and in that moment the town gained a fury it had never known. Hard to convey how radical anger can be when a place has been built on polite fear for a century. Something shifted. A shared agreement that the mechanism's tyranny, once invisible, was now unforgivable. It responded by glowing hotter, crimson turning to searing white. My pulse hammered like a drum line. Mayor Quentin rolled onto his knees, wheezing, "If it drains us, there will be no one left to free the square. Sacrifice one, save all." "Sacrifice," Elsie said, testing the word like spoiled milk. "We've sacrificed quietly every day of our lives." She took her screwdriver again, but this time targeted the bell. Quick twist to loosen the bolt, another to rip out the iron clapper. The bell sagged, mute. She chucked the clapper into the snow, where it hissed like dry ice. Instantly, the light beneath the glass guttered, and the pull on my chest eased by half. Pietra gasped in wonder. The mayor's eyes widened. Hope or horror, I could not tell. Encouraged, Elsie beckoned me. Together we approached the pedestal. Up close, I saw hairline seams I'd never noticed. Runic script etched along the bezel. Each symbol bent into the next like links in a chain. Embedded letters flickered as though trying to rearrange themselves. Time, captured and restless. "If we can break another element," she muttered, "perhaps the circuit fails." I scanned the town. Frozen figures still stood mid-gesture. Lovers locked in a wordless quarrel. A milkwoman tilting her jug. All depending on us. I swallowed dread and found resolve. "The winding strap," I said. "If we can undo it, maybe that severs the siphon." The strap's buckle glowed faintly. radiating heat. I tugged, flinched, inhaled. A smell like singed roses. Elsie wrapped her scarf around my hand and helped pull. Inch by scorching inch it gave, leather protesting like a living throat. At last, a rivet popped free. Immediately, a thunderclap shook the plinth. The minute hand jerked forward one notch. Snowflakes resumed a lazy downward drift before halting again. "Not enough," Pietra cried out. She was on her knees, clutching her chest. The mayor staggered to her side, but simply touching her seemed to accelerate his collapse. Their pulses were being mined faster now, perhaps because Elsie and I had partially loosened the cap. It needed a final act, either fastening or release. With eyes that glimmered resignation, Mayor Quinton rose and marched toward the dial, his blistered hand wrapped around the hour hand. "I was elected to protect," he rasped. "I will protect." He braced, exhaled, and with a roar twisted. The glass spiderwebbed red-white light sprayed out in shards. The hour hand sheared off at the base. Sound rushed back. So sudden the air seemed to implode. Wind howled through stovepipes. The cry of a newborn reached from a distant porch. The street lamps' flames leapt alive, dancing, frantic. Time restarted, but not gently. The town shuddered under an avalanche of stored seconds, minutes. All the moments held back, surging forward in a grotesque backlog. People lurched like marionettes forced to catch up on every motion they'd been denied. I felt my own heart stutter, miss beats, then resume at double pace. Yet the clock, though wounded, still drew from us. The broken hour hand hovered, magnetized, wobbling in midair as if deciding whether to reattach. We had snatched only a temporary reprieve. Elsie yelled over the cacophony. "We must empty it completely." "How?" I shouted. "Give it what it can't hold, free time." Her eyes were bright, cheeks flushed. She gestured to the broken face. "Open it. Let the beats escape." There was a crowbar beneath the bandstand. I sprinted across the square, boots splashing through time-lagged puddles that appeared and evaporated in the same second. I seized the bar, dashed back. Together we wedged it into the fractured glass. Elsie's arms trembled, but fury made her strong. With a final grunt, the crystal exploded outward. No shards, just pure light, streaming up like a reversed waterfall, dissipating into the night sky. Each pulse made a note, a melodic swarm of heart sounds, lub-dubs, layered into a chord richer than any cathedral organ. It was terrifyingly beautiful. And then silence. The dial was empty. Where once a fiery hum had churned, now sat only a hollow cavity, gears still but uncorrupted. The town around us steadied. Frozen figures softened into motion and then stilled again. Of their own embarrassed volition, people clasped foreheads, uncertain what headache had assailed them. Snow continued its ordinary fall. Pietra breathed slow even. The mayor slumped against the plinth, alive but pale. I checked my own pulse, steady, my chest light. Elsie laid a palm on the brass shell. "It's hollow," she whispered wonderingly. "Finally." News spread in cautious ripples. Most residents retained no clear memory of the paralysis, only a sensation of les mavus and sudden fatigue. A committee was formed to decide what to do with the clock. Some argued it had been neutralized and thus harmless. Others wanted it dismantled, melted, buried. One faction lobbied to restore it, believing no town was complete without a timepiece. The debates grew heated. I attended every meeting, as did Elsie, always on the same side. Destroy it. We lost the vote. Nostalgia is a sly beast. People cling to symbols, even those that hurt them, rather than face emptiness. So under a mild spring sun, artisans were hired to craft a new mechanism, purely mechanical, they promised. No soul-siphoning runes, no secret leathers. Everyone came bearing homemade cogs carved from oak and brass coins polished to mirrors. Children sang. The mayor, arm in a sling, smiled wanly and delivered a speech about unity. I watched from the back, stomach tight. Could one drain a predator of blood and expect it not to bite when revived? The replacement parts fitted easily, almost eagerly. When they tested the bell, it rang a clear, innocent D that quivered through the budding branches. The crowd cheered. Yet I saw Elsie's fingers twitch as though plucking unseen strings, her eyes fixed on some calculation in the sky. Afterward, she asked if I noted the resonance. A fraction sharp, not in the key they'd tuned. I had, though I only half admitted it. We parted with a pact to visit nightly, ears to the casing, hearts braced for mischief. A year passed uneventfully. Couples proposed beneath the ticking hands. The town continued its festivals. The bronze mayor figure was polished. I married Elsie that autumn, under lanterns strung from the elm branches. We toasted, danced, believed ourselves ordinary newlyweds. But during our first winter midnight, we strolled through soft snow and heard faint, so faint, the whisper of an extra tick between ticks, too quick to belong to any gear. We pressed our palms to the bronze shell. Deep within, against the metal, pulsed a tremor almost imperceptible, but undeniably organic. Our hearts? I asked. Not yet, she said, voice steel, but something alive. We told no one. Instead, we studied. We pored over journals of horology, ancient grimoires, any scrap referencing chronomancy. We mapped the plaza, measured electromagnetic anomalies, dissected old strap fragments, still stored in the records office. We learned the runes spelled a phrase in archaic dialect, "Keep the moment hungry." We argued until dawn about whether hunger could be starved without cruelty. Our first child, Lorian, was born in May. As the nurse cut the cord, the clock chimed noon and a tremor rippled through the floorboards. Lorian wailed, then calmed when placed against Elsie's heartbeat. I remembered what my father had said. If it stops, time freezes, but hearts keep draining. I pictured my infant suspended in air, his tiny pulse milked away. The image rooted itself like ice in my lungs. That night I went to the square alone. The moon ramped silver across the dial. I stared at the still hollow front. No glow, just mundane brass, yet sensed vibrations traveling through the cobbles, up my shins. I spoke aloud. "You will not feed on my family." The echo swallowed my words. No reply. I yielded to rage, hefted a sledge left by masons, and struck the casing. Sparks skittered. The bell clanged protest. I hit again. Once, twice, until my muscles burned. Behind me, footsteps. Elsie appeared, hair unbound, cloak dragging. She said nothing, simply raised her own hammer. Together we battered the housing. Metal dented, screws loosened. On the fifth stroke, a note rang out, high, plaintive, nothing like a chime. A filament of gold light seeped through a crack, then fizzled. The mechanism was still trying to heal itself, to re-establish the siphon. We accelerated. With every blow, I pictured children free to awaken without invisible tethers in their chests. I pictured my father's bent shoulders, the wheelwright's shriveled heart, Mayor Quinton's burnt palm. I pictured moments belonging to themselves, not trapped in gears. Finally, the casing burst. Inside, among honest cogs and springs we had installed, coiled a new leather strap, translucent, wet, pulsing, self-grown. At its core glimmered a seed of red light. Before it could react, Elsie drove her hammer straight through. A shriek ripped the air, less sound than sensation, the clanging horror of centuries' worth of stolen beats protesting their eviction. The strap withered, light guttering to ash. A hush fell, so deep we heard frost forming on nearby leaves. We waited. No pull on the chest, no hum in the stones. The clock lay gutted, inert. By dawn, townspeople arrived, horrified at the wreckage. Some shouted, others wept. We stood side by side, hands still gripping blood-flecked steel, and faced them. We told the truth, not the polite version, but every raw piece. The siphoning, the near freeze, the newborn's cry answering the chime. For every skeptic, there was someone who recalled inexplicable exhaustion after standing near the square, or a night terror stitched with ticking. Truth, once spoken aloud, propagated like wildfire through dry grass. Resistance collapsed. The council voted, this time unanimously, to dismantle the remnants and scatter them beyond the county line. Gears became paperweights, the bell recast into horseshoes, the plinth broken for paving stones. We carted the dial to the deepest part of the river and watched it sink, moonlight rippling across its face until it vanished in silt. I swear the water exhaled. Seasons rotated. Children measured seasons by migrating geese rather than a domineering bell. Pulses beat unharvested. Some said they missed the comforting chime. Habit, like nostalgia, is a stubborn vine. But Lorien grew strong. When he learned to walk, he toddled across the square. Now a humble lawn planted with wildflowers, no pillar, no clock. Only a grove of birch descendants of those that first whispered around the clearing. Their leaves shivered, but not in fear. One summer evening I lay with Elsie on a picnic blanket while fireflies stitched green morse across the dusk. She set my son's tiny hand on my chest. "Listen," she told him. He listened, eyes wide. He heard one heart mine, seeping solely for the body that housed it. Then we pressed his hand to Elsie's breast, and he heard another, distinct, sovereign. No chorus underground, no echo from the plaza. Just two singular rhythms holding their private time. "Remember," Elsie told him softly, "no clock owns you. You give your heart by choice, never by accident." I closed my eyes, felt my pulse converse with hers in gentle counterpoint, and finally understood what freedom sounds like. Not silence, but the tender permission for every beat to choose its own measure.